memory, and ADHD in children. My presentation objectives. My position is that taking Ritalin will increase working memory performance in children with ADHD. My first argument is from a chemical and biological standpoint that Ritalin compensates for neurotransmitters and brain areas affected in ADHD. My second argument is from a behavioral point of view, that people with ADHD demonstrate observable behavioral and social changes when administered Ritalin. My third argument focuses more on working memory specifically, suggesting Ritalin has an impact on multiple factors involved in working memory. My initial argument. Dopamine is a molecule that transports signals between nerve cells. High levels of dopamine increase human, rodent, and primate cognitive ability, motivation to perform physical and cognitive tasks, as well as working memory directly. These tasks are not usually demonstrated in a child with ADHD, as dysfunction of dopamine receptors is implicated to ADHD. The increased cognitive ability is in part attributed to the role of dopamine in the striatum in response to Ritalin. ADHD patients show impaired prefrontal cortex function as well as the striatum. Ritalin administration is associated with increased neural activity in the prefrontal cortex. In the prefrontal cortex, a consistent increase in dopamine release was seen 1 hour after a high dose, but not low doses of Ritalin. Low doses of Ritalin did increase dopamine slightly in the prefrontal cortex and more significantly in the striatum, most noticeably between 1 and 2 hours. Low doses of Ritalin improved cognitive task performance, but a high dose of Ritalin made the monkey drowsy. Tests labeled delayed response, go-no-go task, no-go error, and self-control reveal that the error rate was significantly smaller with the doses of methylphenidate 1, 2, and 5 milligrams per kilogram than with methylphenidate 0 milligrams per dose. This demonstrates the cognitive enhancement effects in Ritalin and the improvement in working memory under specific dosages. My second argument. Common behaviors observable in children with ADHD include defiant and aggressive behavior, increased refusal to follow directions, and oftentimes hyperactivity. These behaviors have been proven to be impacted by stimulant drugs such as Ritalin. Studies in both rats and humans have verified that Ritalin effectively controls the 3 primary symptoms of inattention, hyperactivity, impulsivity, and in addition, functioning of working memory. Decreases over time are demonstrated in the display graph seen on the right. Reports from teachers and parents suggest that their child's engagement in activities, such as homework, drastically increased, as well as how settled they appear. Up to 90% of ADHD diagnosed students are reported to be more attentive and engaged at schools, with better recollection and memory of tasks when taking Ritalin. In some cases, minor side effects were observed when the methylphenidate was administered, however major side effects were broadly avoided. This is beneficial knowledge for parents of children with ADHD and health experts included, with knowledge that Ritalin can generally be a viable and safe option for children under correct dosages. My third argument. In this study, participants were a clinical sample of 130 children with ADHD having been diagnosed, aged between 6 and 12 years old. Each child participated in an acute, randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled crossover trial using 3 methylphenidate doses. 4 working memory measures were also used that varied in processing demands. These were storage versus manipulation of information, as well as auditory, verbal, and visual spatial modality. Auditory verbal manipulation of information significantly improved on low dose and medium doses compared to the placebo group, but did not differ from placebo and low dose. This demonstrates the true effects of Ritalin, as there is a correlation between increasing dosage and working memory changes. Increased Ritalin doses also improved the ability to manipulate visual spatial information compared to a low dosage and placebo. Similar beneficial effects on visual spatial storage were also observable. In contrast to the previous areas of working memory that were affected by Ritalin, there was no effect on auditory verbal storage information. Pros and cons of the sources. A strength of source 1 is that it allows insight into what occurs in different areas of the brain on a chemical level when Ritalin is consumed, providing biological reasoning behind Ritalin and ADHD. A strength of source 2 is that it demonstrates the behavioral benefits that Ritalin can provide to children's memory, social awareness, and classroom behavior. And a strength of the final source 3, is that it specifically looks at different components of working memory and how Ritalin can influence and impact each of these aspects respectively. Weaknesses. A weakness of source 1 is that it was tested on animals and therefore can never be identically comparable to human response. A weakness of source 2 is that it is too generalized and the individual response to the same medication is at the end of the day completely subjective and can differ. A weakness of the final source is that its detail and complexity when looking at methylphenidate effects on working memory would be overlooked by many people, such as parents, when looking for answers about the effects of Ritalin on a child. The conclusion based off the evidence. The overall effect that Ritalin has on children with ADHD's general performance and working memory is positive, supporting the initial position. This is supported by each of the 3 chosen sources, as they demonstrate how Ritalin activates certain areas of the brain, can enhance multiple areas of behavior and long-term memory. These are the references for the sources used. Thank you.